to the cloud. All right, this thing says we're recording, I do believe.
Yay.
All right, so here we are, ladies. Installment number 1. We are discussing The Power of Motherhood by Nancy Campbell. It's a study that all 3 of us have actually done before, and we're doing this for not only our benefit, but the benefit of all of those who are following along at home. And I'm just really excited about doing this every week.
Me too. I wish it could be in person, but Sherry had to move away.
I know, and I'm hoping to get some other folks that are far away to jump in here once in a while to participate, which would be great. And even those folks in town in Las Vegas that would like to join us, I don't know if we could do a great discussion on this if we had, even more than 5 people. I don't know how that would go. So I kind of want to keep it to 2, 3, 4 of us max each week and then record it. And then we're going to post this recording into its own thread on our little group called Pink Peas, Not Just Homeschoolers. And we'll use that thread each week to be the point of discussion. I imagine people will watch it and then they'll further talk about stuff within the thread of the video.
And you're still having meetings at your house on Wednesdays.
That's correct. So tonight is a meeting, and so we're a week behind right now with this. We're just going to do chapter 1 here on video. We did chapter 1 last week, but we're going to do this again next week, video for chapter 2. But next week I'm taking a bye week because Dave's taking me on a date. So it'll all be caught up here in a minute. In 2 more weeks, we'll be doing the same chapter here in the morning and then in my home in the evening.
Okay.
Cool. So, all right. What was chapter 1 about? I forgot already.
I can't read my book. I have a baby. Hang on.
Chapter 1 was about embracing motherhood. If I had to summarize it, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, the introduction talks about that. And then the title of chapter 1 is Mothers Are God's Idea. Which is that cool.
What do you guys think about the section on the very first page where it talks about El Shaddai?
I love that. I remember the first time we did this, that really standing out to me.
Yes.
Well, like she says, it really does reveal the mother heart of God. It's brought home to me, when you're nursing all the stinking time. Yes. And you feel like, I can't do any of these other things that I want to do. And a lot of them are really good things, like Bible studies. And knowing that is something that is a characteristic of God that he put in us, that he didn't put in men, is very comforting.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. And of course, all the scriptures that talk about gathering you under my wings, how I just wanted to do this. And yeah, we think, well, that's not really a guy thing. That's the mother heart. Sherry, what do you like about the El Shaddai part?
I just thought I had never really considered a mother's attributes being part of God, in the sense that it was also part of him. Like he could be both mother and father, sort of, all of those things come from him. I don't know. I guess I never really considered that, so that was kind of cool. And I guess it just reaffirmed that this stuff is important, even though it feels completely unimportant. Like me sitting here nursing this baby and being happy and that's important. It really is an important work. It's not just me slacking off.
Yes.
And that's so I haven't had a nursing baby now for a couple of years, and I'm laughing at you because I'm sitting here thinking, well, of course you're doing the most important work. You have to feed the baby. Like, we have to feed the baby. There's no getting around that. And yet, how quickly, when we're not in that moment, how quickly we forget what that actually feels like day to day, and how easy it is to trick ourselves, trick our own minds into thinking that we're not doing anything. And that's just so silly. Feed the baby.
Yeah.
We have to feed the baby.
For me also, it's kind of powerful in light of the many gender discussions I get sucked into online.
Okay, how about
I rarely say anything, so I don't want to say I'm really getting sucked in, but I do pay attention. And particularly in the breastfeeding support arena, it's a really hot topic right now. And it's easy to forget that God invented breastfeeding and that he gave it to women, and he had his reasons. And it just sort of, well, it's empowering. I don't like to use that word because I think it's lost its meaning. But it's really empowering to know that this is a woman's privilege. And God chose for it to be a woman's privilege.
I fully agree with that. And yeah, I guess I'm not seeing what you're seeing, but I know it's out there, the breastfeeding stuff. Or should we say chest feeding?
Chest feeding.
Oh my gosh, is that what that means?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got invited to a Leche League meeting on Friday night, and it said like breastfeeding, chest feeding, and I was like, is that for like adoptive parents? Like maybe women who can't breastfeed but are still, I'm getting off topic here, but I didn't know what that meant.
Okay, well, I don't have that hat on right now, but let me just say this without my hat on. I do know that some of the leaders in the organization are very much so pushing for language that they feel is inclusive. But I don't believe at this point that anything has come down from the top on that, and I actually don't see how it's going to happen. And so, lots of other of the pieces of the organization, they're just carrying on as usual. It's still called the womanly art of breastfeeding, and we're just going to carry on with that. So, and like Maggie said, this reveals a lot about the nature of God and a part of God that we've never considered before. And he did give it to us. He gave it to us. The baby came out of our body. The baby's going to be fed from our body. It's pretty simple.
This also brings to mind something from another book that probably a lot of people who are doing this study have read or should read. And that is Sarah Mackenzie's Teaching from Rest. And in that book, she encourages you to look at the time that you put into relationships, and remember that to have a good relationship with somebody, you have to lavish them with time. And it's easy to forget that because we're in a hurry all the time. And especially homeschooling moms, always trying to check off everything on the boxes. So, how we're always saying, it's one of the advantages of breastfeeding is that we get to sit down and relax. Well, it's so much more than that, because for me, the word that keeps popping into my head now is lavish. You get to lavish this baby with time and build a relationship, and whoever else happens to be around too. Toddlers. Then you get to be with that person at a slower pace. And remember, this is my opportunity to lavish you with time.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there are other ways to do it that are quicker and faster. You could hand somebody else a bottle, You could turn on the TV for the toddler, whatever. Or you could say, oh, I'll take you out to ice cream tomorrow, and then never do it. So I like this. It's an opportunity to lavish.
And you know what? It's going to start happening at my house too. That's okay.
Just go to the bathroom. We're all going to be in the closet by the end of this.
I know. I think this is funny. Okay. Okay.
Go on.
Let's see. Okay, here's something that I posted on my own Facebook wall last week or the week before that I just loved from this chapter. And that was a section on page 8 that started with all mothers love their children, but not all mothers love motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, I'll just read the paragraph. It says, this is the secret for liberating us into the fulfillment of motherhood. It is only when we receive the revelation that God has created us for this task and that this is our destiny that we will walk in the power and anointing of motherhood. It is only when we embrace motherhood with all our hearts that we will truly enjoy it. Even though we devotedly love our children, if we do not wholeheartedly accept the role of mothering, we will never experience the true glory of motherhood. One more paragraph. This is why many mothers are frustrated with their mothering role. They've spent years training for careers and find motherhood a threat to their career. Of course, they love their children, but the actual function of motherhood is a hindrance to their plans. This causes vexation and frustration. God wants us to not only love our children, but totally love and embrace the high calling of motherhood, which he has given to us as a divine charge. And then she goes into 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 14 and 15, which tells us that it wasn't Adam who was deceived, but it was the woman, and that she shall be saved in childbearing if she continues in faith and charity, so on and so forth. And then there's a discussion there about what does it mean to be saved in childbearing. But those two paragraphs that I read, I think that pretty much, for me, for what I see going on in the world, or in America at least, I think that pretty much epitomizes the state of the role of motherhood. And I can tell you how many Christian women I see who choose to drop their role because they've got it in their head that some other role is more important. And it crushes me. It just breaks my heart. And then on the other side of that, something I think is really cool is that I see families out there where they are not Christian families at all, and yet some of these women have discovered this divine, and they wouldn't call it divine, but I don't know what they would call it, but they've discovered their high calling of motherhood, and they actually take it very seriously and have embraced it wholeheartedly. And so I'm always surprised at the rift I see there between, the Christians who won't do it and then the non-Christians who sometimes do it. And, did you guys see that on Facebook when I posted it?
No. Am I missing something on the group, you mean?
No, it was on my page, and you didn't miss much.
Oh, okay.
No, I saw it.
I'll go back and check it. But you know what I've noticed, and you're right, there are families who really, they're inspiring and they're an example, and they're not Christians, and they don't claim to be. But God has just revealed the truth to them. And so they live a life of self-sacrifice for their kids. And I really think that that's why in Titus 2, that's why we learn that if we are not embracing motherhood the way that God created us, then we're blaspheming the word of God. And God has chosen motherhood as an outlet to reveal his heart to the world. When you come upon one of these moms or, one of these families who are not Christian, but they're walking this and they're living it out. When you start talking about Jesus laying down his life and how, the life of a Christian is that of self-sacrifice, they don't go, oh, geez, why would I want any part of that? They go, oh, of course, they get it. They get it because God's revealing himself to them in this role that he gave them.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Did I cut you off?
No. I've been gathering my thoughts here. I find it interesting too. No, Journey. No. I find it interesting too because when I was reading on page 5, it says that El Shaddai, we see the self-sacrificing love of God, giving and pouring himself out for others. As God sacrificed and gave his very best, his only son, we show forth his mother heart when we serve and give sacrificially. That hit me because I know that, I have a hard time with motherhood because, and it's not because I don't realize it's not important. I guess the world view of it is that, like, you shouldn't only be a mom. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to lose yourself and you're going to, be walked all over and all this stuff. And so when I read that passage and it says that he gave sacrificially, I was like, sacrifices aren't supposed to be easy. That's kind of, to me, that's not a sacrifice then. So, like, when I read that, I was like, so it's okay if sometimes it really sucks. Like, sometimes it sucks to be up all night with my baby who I just want my husband to be able to feed. Or sometimes it sucks when my kids want me to do everything for them and they don't want their dad to do it. Like, those things can suck sometimes. Like, I want to be able to go to on a vacation with my husband without my nursing baby, but that's not that's not my season at the moment, And so when I read that it was a sacrifice, I was like, okay, so it's okay if I'm not happy about it all the time. Like, I can still do what God created me to do and sometimes just be unhappy about it. And I'm still going to push through, but I don't have to love every second of it, is what I kind of got from that. And so I felt like that was a little encouraging. Like, it's okay if it sucks sometimes. Like, that's all right.
And there's a promise in the word. I don't remember the reference, but
I'll be right back.
Those who lay down their lives and give up their lives, they'll find it. So when people say things like, well, you're going to lose yourself in motherhood, yeah, you will. You'll come out at the other end of the 20 years or 40 years of motherhood or however many years God gives you, a completely different person. But you're very likely to look at yourself at the end and say, wow, I am so glad I'm this person and not who I was 20 years ago, because I would have missed out on this and this and this. And God is just really faithful to give us something better than what we're holding on to so tightly. If you feel yourself like, oh, but I wanted this, if you just let it go, you get something back that's even better.
Yeah. I guess that's part of helping grow your faith there, right? Like, you're putting your faith that his promise that it's going to be better when you get over to the other side. Like, sometimes you're like, are you sure we're going the right way? Are you sure this is your plan? Like, this is looking a little dreary around here. I'm not sure I want to keep going. He's like, come on, just trust me, And so sometimes it's hard. But I can see already from being drug along, because sometimes I feel like I'm being drug along. It's been better than it was. I can look at some of my answers from this chapter 1, which had to have been, I think Logan was an infant, so he just turned 7, so at least 6 years ago. And, like, I can see where I've come so far, so I'm like, okay, look, see, like, it's worth it. Just keep going.
Yeah, I wish that I had my notes from the first time I did this.
I have a lot of blanks left there, too, so that was encouraging that I could answer some of them now.
Ah, that's cool. All right. Let's see. The next section, always abounding and discharging it to the full. Oh, and I love, something I always love about this book is how she uses a lot of different translations so that she can kind of make the point better. So with the discharging it to the full on middle of page 9, and I just should say also that we all have very old copies, and I noticed when I posted the link to and mine used to look like that, but remember it got all ripped, and Skylar got some of our spiral bound at Kinko's so they wouldn't die.
I need to do that.
But I was going to say too that I noticed on Above Ruby's website that the cover of the book is different now, and it says it's revised. So when we say page 9, I have no idea with people following along who have a new book if it's right or not. So we'll have to be careful with that and make sure that we're in the, everybody knows what chapter we're on. Anyway.
We're still in the introduction then.
Well, we're in chapter 1. We're in chapter 1.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Okay.
Yes. So she said, J.B. Phillips' translation says, and I have no idea who that is, but it says, God ordained you to your work. See that you do not fail him. And then Moffat's translation says, attend to the duty entrusted to you and discharge it to the full. And so like I was saying, I love how she uses the different translations just to kind of drill it into our thick skulls. What it's telling us, like, this is your job now. Go do it. Go do your job.
You know what I found cool about that is that this past weekend, actually, I had an argument or a pity party with myself about cleaning the house because I don't keep it spotless because it's kind of pointless. I keep it clean, but I'm not scrubbing walls and whatnot, okay? So, like, the house gets dirty, gross. But I was annoyed because nobody keeps it clean and nobody cares. So I'm like, screw it. Like, what the hell's the point? This is stupid. You know what I mean? Like, this is a waste of my time. And then I just spiraled on into my, worldly thouts there. And so when I read this, I was like, wait a minute, I'm not doing this for these stupid humans who are just not even going to appreciate it. Like, I'm supposed to be cleaning my house because that's the job God gave me. He stuck me in this house, and I should be taking care of it because that's what he has asked me to do as a wife, not because my husband's going to smile at me sweetly and bring me flowers because I keep a clean house. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have my whole thought about that was all wrong. And so I've been so angry and bitter. And so I just haven't done it to avoid the angry and the bitterness. And so when I read that God's your employer and that he says, where was it? So 1 Corinthians, she quotes this at the bottom of that page. Your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, it sucks. And nobody cares, but it's not in vain. Like, it's not for them. It's for God, which means you're not going to be thanked or praised or anything here on earth, per se.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, my reward is in heaven, knowing that I'm doing a good job for him, not for children, not for my husband, not so that my friends say, oh, my God, your house is so clean and beautiful. It's not about that.
Right.
There you go.
That's so true and so wonderful to know. Well, of course, God does see, and he does care. But, beyond thinking of God as our employer, our earthly employer, I guess you could say, is our husband. If we're looking at this from the point of view of accepting this as a career, the career of motherhood, then for those of us who have worked outside the home, maybe that can be helpful to think of it that way, because unless we're the kind of person who can't keep a job, we would show up to work and we didn't really whine about how underappreciated we were, or, oh my gosh, can you believe that they would ask me to do that? You show up, your boss says, all right, here's your job, and you say, okay, and you do it. And that's it. And if you don't like it, you just kind of keep it to yourself and you do it.
Yes.
And the people who do the best at their jobs, who keep their jobs the longest, who are eventually noticed and promoted maybe, are those who just kind of show up and do it and accept it. And that was helpful to me. You know, when you're tempted to go get a job outside the home, that's one of the pictures that comes to me. I don't remember where I read it or who said it to me, but they said, why would it be acceptable for you to go put yourself under some other man's headship and honor and respect him without question for every little mundane task that he puts forth? You know, why can't you do that at home? Why would it not be acceptable to do that at home for your husband who loves you? You know, that really helped me a lot.
Yes, that's also a huge trap that we fall into. And that is seeking the praise and approval of people who don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, like we're gonna go bust our butts for the paycheck that, you know, this slave master that hands us some chump change for a job, and when we get home, we treat our husbands like garbage because what? Because he's not paying you like you're an employee. Like it makes no sense. Like there's some cognitive dissonance there. Like we're not thinking it through it clearly.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the discussion questions. Is there something else in the chapter you wanted to talk about before we did the questions, you guys?
Yeah. I thought it was really cool and interesting that on page 8, so right before this, in I think the Timothy scripture, it was saying that a woman shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. But I thought it brought questions to my mind, like, is that why we see so much of ourselves in our own children? Do you know what I mean? Like, yes. Logan he's like me. Thank you. In that he gets angry and he thinks that everything needs to be fair, and if it's not, you know, it's this huge injustice against him. And so as a mom, like, I have to try to figure my own sin about that out so that I can help parent him in a way to help him through it. And I was like, so is that like why this happens? Is that so much like why each child, you know, you have to let some more selfishness go? I feel like, you know, like there's always
Journey's going to be a teenager someday.
No, I know.
There's a lot of young ladies in my house who are a perfect mirror of me. And oftentimes I do not like that image, and if I ever ask myself, why would they behave this way? And I have to stop and look at myself. And I kind of looked at this for a minute when I wrote it down. You'll be saved through childbearing if you continue in faith and love and self-control.
And let's clarify this for 1 second, and then you can go on. Saved through childbearing does not mean giving birth or, you know, like this is not a plea to just having babies because God said you're going to be saved through having babies, okay? So,
and it's not a salvation issue.
Yes, go on, Maggie, now. Go on.
I just think it's interesting how in all of these different epistles where Paul is writing about women and their role in the church and the kind of character that they need to be developing, he always puts self-control in there or sobriety. And I think we tend to just kind of glaze over that without thinking about what that means. But motherhood really is an exercise in self-control most of the time. At least it is for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many times where I have to rein it in. And I feel like, I don't know, like every day probably I eat a piece of humble pie. Where it's like, oh, right. Yep.
So
gonna have to let that one go.
So kind of bringing what you were saying together, Sherry, with the scripture, the saved, let's back it up maybe. I mean, right before this in 1 Timothy chapter 2, it's talking about women. It's not about your golden curls, but it's your modesty and self-control that's proper and godly. Let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. And then it says, for Adam was formed first, and then Eve, and Adam was not deceived, but it was the woman. And yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. So kind of exactly what you were saying, Sherry, how the children that we've been given bring us all of these opportunities to grow, to learn, to be for ourselves, to be refined. I mean, so often we look at these children and we think, okay, I'm the mom and God gave me this responsibility for a short time so I can help guide your heart and do all of these things. And so we're looking at our role as, okay, I'm going to do this for you. Come on, we're going to do this. I'm going to, we're going to be moral and righteous and all this, whatever, I'm going to train you right. And while we're doing all of this, it's actually refining us. It's actually God doing work in us, which always, that's a cool conclusion to come to. And it's also a place where women start to fight back, fight against it, drop their role, leave it alone. Because, Sherry, are you muted? No, you're not.
I was. No, I muted myself. I muted it to do some child rearing.
Gotcha. Okay, but I was going to, let me just finish up. When women start to realize that it's themselves who has to conform to the image of God in order to raise the children, a lot of us shirk, back away, run away, ditch it, whatever. And it's cool. It's cool to watch. We're tricking ourselves and thinking, oh, we're doing this great thing for our kids. No, God's refining us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I've
We're
realized
all
that.
disciples, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I've realized that it's not so much about me trying to get them to find and obey God as much as it is about them watching me on my journey and watching how God works through me and is changing my heart and not shutting them out of that, because more times than not, it's I need to work on my own attitude or pride about whatever it is they're doing, and how I can respond and how I can act and how I can show, God to them rather than just getting their immediate obedience, because that makes me look like a good mom. It's not about, it's more about my journey. I feel like children, like you said, like, what is that saying? Like iron sharpens whatever, like going against the grain. I don't know. I can't think of what it is. I'll post it later, but they're sharpening, they're honing me, they're making me a better Christian.
Yes.
If I allow them to. I mean, because otherwise you just want to get on your high horse and be like, I'm your mom, it's because I said so, even when you're wrong. I don't know how many times I find that I'm in the wrong, and how humbling it is to have to go to your children and apologize and explain to them that this is not the way I should have responded, and I'm, sorry, so on and so forth. And that's not easy, because you just want to be like, well, I'm the mom and I say so, and that's why. And even if I make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You should listen anyway, It's hard not to let that get in there. I thought it was interesting.
I can
Yes.
relate.
Yes, yes, yes. All right. The last section was extended mothering. And this was just about, you know, the fact that there's some ladies who are done having children. Maybe their children aren't at home anymore, or maybe they were never married, or maybe they were never able to have children. And mothering doesn't necessarily mean the baby that came from our body. But the picture of mothering that God has given us can be extended to anybody, really. And I like how she points out that in a lot of the New Testament letters, they say things like, say hi to so-and-so's mom for me. You know, like, hey, say hi to her mom because she's cool. You know, I love that. So, of course, the Proverbs 31 woman stretches out her hands to the poor and reaches forth her hands to the needy. So it was just explaining how a mother heart also extends beyond the walls of your own home, which I think is cool. And, you know, that gives us, I don't want to say a sense of purpose, but, you know, our minds are so errant that it is hard to see the good that we do when we're trapped in our own four walls. And so when we do extend that outside of our walls, you know, it kind of gives us a little perk, like, oh, yes, I am, you know, doing these good things for the Lord. All right, let's do her questions.
All right. I didn't number these when I wrote down my answers because I don't write in my book.
That's okay. I'll read the first one. Let's see. What does it mean to you to embrace motherhood? If you have not consciously done this before, Maggie, we know you haven't. Just kidding. What changes in your attitude do you have to make to function the way God created you?
Of course, I have no idea what I wrote first time around.
Hey, you already had 3 or 4 kids at that point.
Yeah. This time around, I'm looking at what I wrote. For some reason, I have felt like I keep putting off the important things. So what I wrote to myself was something along the lines of not procrastinating on embracing motherhood. Because there's such a thing as accepting, you know, intellectually, oh, okay, yeah, I'm important. Okay, yeah, this is worthwhile, you know, and that'll keep me from running out and getting a job and letting someone else raise my kids. But to really embrace it, I sort of have this mental habit of putting that off because there's always 1,000 tasks that have to be done. And, you know, sitting and, you know, actually sitting with a child and listening to their story about how they were rollerblading or whatever, you know, that gets put on the back burner. And so that morning, I wrote a long list of things that I had purposely noticed the day before that were really amazing and wonderful. And I would have forgotten them already because I'm looking at these like, oh, yeah, isn't that sweet? You know, I happened upon those 2 kids, you know, helping each other or whatever. And it's easy for me to overlook all that really positive, wonderful stuff. And oh gosh, yeah, I'm glad they finally learned that lesson. Or, you know, even some small victory of my own. Well, I chose this instead of this. And here was the outcome, So for me, it's slowing down and noticing the positive things, and not only saying something out loud to those kids, but, writing it down for myself. Because, like you're saying, Sherry, you are not the only one who feels completely unnoticed. Like, am I the only one really who cares if all the chickens die? Seriously. Someone else feed them, please. Or, definitely not the only person who knows how to run a washing machine. So it's good to notice these things, to take a minute and say, oh, gosh, there's a lot of really positive stuff going on here. And I would have overlooked it if I hadn't, written it down or said something at that time.
When I read that question, I kind of focused on the word embracing. It stood out to me. Mm-hmm. So I thought of embracing what I wrote originally, and then I actually went to the dictionary to look up the word embracing just to see what it said. And so the dictionary defines embrace as to press to bosom, to hug, to take or receive gladly or eagerly, accept willingly, to adopt, to take in with eye or mind. And so what originally prompted what I thought about was embracing motherhood is like welcoming it. You need to welcome it or embrace it. And it reminded me of like when a friend comes to your house, like you embrace them, you hug them, you open your door completely, you let them in with a smile, and you're glad that they're there, and you want them to feel loved and accepted and welcomed when they're with you. And I guess I realized that motherhood, sometimes it's easy to forget that it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a duty. It's not just these, actions that have no meaning. And it should be actions coming from a relationship with that child or with your house or, towards your family. And it's easy to forget that and to only see it as the person who manages things. Like, I guess I had a disconnect between only wanting to manage making sure the dishes are done every day at this times and making sure laundry is done on Fridays, and instead embracing and having a relationship with my kids while we're doing dishes, or coming alongside them and helping them, and not just trying to focus on the actions of it and instead on the heart issues. And so that's what I thought about. Like, am I embracing motherhood like I would somebody coming over to my house? Or am I like, got the door halfway shut, like, I don't really have time for you right now. I'm sorry. Like, you would never do that. So why do I treat my children that way? Like, no, sorry, can't listen to your story right now because I really need to, go do dishes. If your friend showed up at your house and really wanted to tell you a story, you'd probably let them in and be excited and sit down and give them your time. And so why don't I treat my children that way? So it's interesting.
Awesome. All right. Explain what you feel is the difference between loving your children and loving the career of motherhood. And I'll just take that first. Like she said before, everybody loves their children.
I would argue with that, but okay. Most mothers do love their children. Most.
Well, here, let's say this a different way. Even people who aren't saved don't even know what love is.
Love their kids.
Because they don't. Because the only reason we know how to love, I recognize that outfit.
Yes.
I put
it on her just for you.
The only reason we're able to love is because God first loved us. That's what our Bible says. So, when we look around at the world and the unsaved and all of these things, people don't actually even know what love is. So let's kind of take that, knowing what she's trying to intend here. Everybody loves their children, okay? Even the junkie that's passed out in the gutter, that person loves their child too. But the point here with this question is, what's the difference between just knowing that you love your child and loving the career of motherhood? And that's, I mean, obviously that's what we've been talking about this whole time. There's a difference between just going through the motions and, yep, that's my kid, and yep, yeah, and putting off your responsibility to somebody else and actually taking on the role that God gave you.
I wrote that it's a choice.
Yeah.
I wrote that, you know, for the most part, everyone loves their children automatically. Like, we have oxytocin, kind of sees to that. Otherwise, they would die, right? Because there's no way we're going to nurse this little human or even bottle feed or wake up every 2 hours if we don't love this little tiny demanding. So I wrote that so that's kind of like a given. But I wrote that there's no love hormone for laundry and vacuuming and dishes and cooking and, you know, kissing, boo-boos. Like, it's a choice we have to make, and we can either choose to find happiness in these things, or we'll choose to look for or are we going to choose to look for our happiness outside of motherhood? You know, like, it's one or the other. Are you trying to find the good in this, and every day, maybe it's just one thing that day that you found happiness in, and everything else, maybe, like I said, was a sacrifice that day. But I'm sure there's one thing, or you can find one thing that you actually enjoy and then kind of build upon that. And she even talked about that. She said, you know, wake up every day and be thankful that you have this little baby who's ready to be up at 6 a.m. and enjoy that. And it's okay if you have to talk yourself into it sometimes. And
well,
like that,
he says to do that. Get up every day and say, "Oh, I love motherhood." You're lying through your teeth.
Hey, that's one of my favorite mottos. Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so true. Remember, there were things that I really didn't enjoy that were aspects of motherhood for me that now I really enjoy them, and I've embraced them and expanded upon them. You know, and I think everybody who has been at it for a while will tell you, oh, I've learned to love this aspect of it. You know, laundry, for instance. I know I'm not the only person who actually enjoys doing laundry, but I sure didn't in the beginning. It's just something I trained myself to enjoy.
It's like the freedom in it, you know. Either you can keep being a slave to, you know, either way the laundry has to get done. So either you can choose to be angry and bitter and mad that your child changed themselves 3 times because they're just learning to dress themselves and they're excited. Or, you know, you can find joy in the fact that, like, I can do this and it's okay, and like I can be happy. And you can tell me about your rollerblading story, like, while I'm folding clothes. Like, let's find time to make it more enjoyable, you know? So it's all, I just wrote that it's all about choices. Either we're going to be looking for happiness outside of our home, which means we're going to be pretty miserable while we're doing our job of motherhood, or, you know, we can find it in the everyday things.
Not to mention, when we look for validation outside of our home, it makes our husbands miserable.
It really does.
Yeah.
Even if we look to people like ourselves, like even between the 3 of us, if we were to start asking for validation from each other in specific ways, I found that that's kind of a pitfall, because then we begin comparing our families to others.
Yeah.
And every husband is different, you know, like I remember reading in one of Debbie Pearl's books when some woman wrote in, well, if my husband was like yours, and she said, hey, did you know my husband never takes out the trash, ever, ever, ever? I always take out the trash. And there are some among you who would be horrified if you had to take out the trash because you feel it's a man's job. And no, put those back. Put them back.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. We have to, I think that might tie into question 3. which says, read 1 Timothy 2, chapter 2, 14, verses 14 and 15. In what ways do you think the performance of motherhood duties will protect us from getting into deception? And I feel like if we're focused on our job as mothers and in our homes and stuff, then we don't have time to be deceived and distracted by, what this woman's life is like. And
Yes.
you don't have time for it. You don't have time to get wrapped up in that TV show and how wonderful her husband is, or how well behaved her one child is, or, this one who travels around the world. Like, you're just kind of in your own thing, and you're, focused on that. I guess if you're focused on God, then you should be okay. I felt like that's what this kept going back to. If I don't keep my eyes on the prize, on God and on Jesus and what he's done for me and what I need to do, then I'm going to be deceived and tricked and unhappy. So,
yes, we need to be thankful for what we've been given and do the best with it. Like, here's what you've been given. Now go do your best.
Yes. In a broader sense too, I think the lessons of parenthood can teach you pretty important theological lessons. You can learn truths about God without ever reading these verses just by mothering. The things just naturally occur in a parenting relationship. And so later when you see them in the Word, you know what they mean. You know in your bones. When he talks about, giving his only son, if you have a child that resonates with you, or, if you're really struggling with forgiveness in your family and you're really just doing it and forgiving over and over and over, and it's become part of your walk, then when you hear something that's kind of false, somebody says something that's almost true about forgiveness but not quite, well, you should leave that person or whatever. You're not as liable to fall into deception. Well, my girlfriend told me that I'm worth more than that, and blah, blah, whatever it may be. You're not as likely to fall for that trap because you've been walking, whatever it is that you're walking, forgiveness or self-sacrifice or whatever. And in your bones what the truth is because you see it. You see it in your family.
Yes, absolutely. All right, the very last question for today is, let's see, share some examples of godly mothers, both married and single, past or present. In what ways did they or do they currently reveal the mother heart of God? This question always cracks me up because one of the main reasons why we were all so desperate to do this group the first time, and the reason why this book continues to come up 10 years later still, and it just always will for us, is because our country kind of missed the boat on this. And so many of us weren't taught, and we didn't have examples. Our grandmothers and our mothers, they were the generations that started going into the workforce, and hamburger helper was invented, and two-income family, and
the self-help movement.
and I don't need a man anyway, so I'll just do this myself. And so a lot of us grew up in homes and in the culture of, we never saw a woman breastfeed in our life. And it scared the bejesus out of us, And so this when I do meet ladies who had a good example, or, you know, when they saw some of these principles like acted out in their real life day to day, you know, I'm always like, oh, wow, you know, what was that like to watch your aunt nurse all of her 18 babies, you know? Or what was that like to have your mom and dad home, all, you know, home and together? And so, do you guys have, what did you guys write down for that?
I didn't put anything because of the group that this is. It's you all. It's you all. Okay.
Yeah.
If I don't even know you yet and you're logged on watching this, it's you, because I guarantee that you do something better than I do. Yes, please. Thank you. But now that it's a different day and I'm thinking back, of course, most of us could say Corinne was probably one of the first examples of a godly mom, and she drew us aside. And if she ever watches this recording, she's probably laughing because she will say, oh, I fail in so many ways, you know. But I remember early on when Corinne and I first became friends, and I know that she would not care that I do this because she shares this herself all the time. When her kids were little, her house was a disaster. Now it's clean all the time because her kids are mostly grown. But when her kids were little, it was just a mess. And it bothered her. But I remember showing up at her house one time, and I learned hospitality that day because she was so welcoming. Like you were saying, Sherry, you know, throw open the door, come on in, spread a sheet over the dog hair on the couch. Here, sit here. And she made me a meal, you know, like she just lavished all of us and told all my girls, you know, something wonderful about themselves. And the house was trashed. And she didn't care. And it taught me hospitality that day. And that's the way that she is. And I think that is what we learned in this chapter about an extension to other people, too. You know, she was kind of like a mother to me. My mother is fantastic. We had a really great mother.
Yes.
Not saying she wasn't an example to me, but we didn't really practice hospitality much. We lived out in the boondocks, and we would have to like get a snowplow to get to our house. So this was something I didn't really learn. I wasn't really comfortable with having people over, and it kind of set me free to even open the doors and do the first Power of Motherhood study. You know, I was asking my husband, do you think it's God who's putting this on my heart? And he's like, well, it's not the devil, is it? I mean, if you want to do it. I was looking around at the stains on the couch and like the dishes, and you know, we really struggled to keep things clean, and it just set me free. Well, no, we're just gonna go ahead and do it. We're just gonna open the house, and anybody who wants can come in, and we'll make them, you know, whatever crappy food we happen to have sitting around. And if it's just popcorn and coffee, nobody's going to care. That's not why they came to your house.
That's right.
And so that, yeah, I don't know why I wasn't thinking of that the other day. I didn't even write anything. I'm like, I'm surrounded by examples. It's all of you. It's all of you. But that really stood out to me today when I thought about that. I remembered that first day where I learned hospitality and what it really means.
I didn't write down anything either because I didn't want it to become like me pinpointing people like, oh, you did this and you did this. And I don't know. I didn't want other people to feel badly or left out. So my thought was that, one, I've been really lucky that I found pink peas so early on in my mothering journey, because those things don't even bother me so much. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've been to all of your guys' houses, and sometimes it's a zoo, and I don't know how to explain how much more comfortable I felt because my house is a zoo sometimes too, and I was like, oh my God, there's other people who I love and admire, and they have a zoo too, and like, I can be comfortable here and not worry about my kids like running around or being a little crazy, or do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you go into houses that are like pristine and clean, like that is not welcoming. That is scary.
Mhm.
If you have more than 2 children, that probably scares you. So I always try to do that myself. Like I invite people over, and if my family or my house is not up to your standards, like that's okay. Like we don't need to hang out, like because you're not my people. You know, I feel like you find your people then. Like if you can love me when everything is chaotic, like you'll love me in 5 years when it's not so chaotic anymore.
Mhm.
And so my thought was that I was going to try, because it's like what you said, it is all of you guys. I don't think I have I don't have any actual in-person friends at the moment, I think, that are Christians. I mean, we attend classical conversations, which is Christian based, but I haven't made real connections there yet. But I was just going to start texting or sending my friends Facebook messages, like maybe like, you know, thank you for showing me what hospitality is. Thank you for showing me what a homemaker is. Or thank you for inviting me to your house that day and teaching me how to make bread.
Yeah.
You know, or like stuff like that. So I figured maybe it was a time to just encourage those women who have touched my lives and just send like a quick thanks.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I think that's great. And I think that knowing how this whole subject of motherhood has been placed on our hearts, I think it's really important for us to concentrate on not keeping it a secret, and not allowing the next generation to have some of the same heartaches that we have, you know? And so I really hope this kind of takes off on its own. I think that'll be fun to see the moms who choose to follow along here. I think it's exciting.
Yes.
And yes, the godly women and mothers in my life, exactly like you said, are all of you, of course. And not that there's not some older women that have some attributes of things that are really great. You know, my mom was awesome for a lot of reasons. And my grandma was awesome for a lot of reasons. And I can think of many older women in my life that are awesome for different reasons. But I think we've really, I think the collective we, the Pink Peas we, I think we've really done ourselves a favor and really worked hard at building up something right here. And to continually to keep encouraging each other in this same old drudgery is awesome, and it's still fun, and it's still needed, and it's still wonderful, and I still love it.
Me too.
So I think that's it. What do you girls think?
I think we're done. I kind of heard a rustle like my husband had come home to
Okay.
stop in for something, and now all the kids are in trouble. So I better go see what they did while I was in.
All right, well, next week we won't be late, and I'll be posting this on our little group ASAP, and this was awesome, and I love you ladies, and thank you.
Love you.
Love
Bye.
you. Thanks for hosting. Bye.
Bye.